In this video, I break down how to get started with coding in 2024 using 7 baby steps. Hey, my name is Khan. I'm currently a software engineer at an early stage startup, and I've worked for companies like Sony and Google. These are the steps that I wish were clearly outlined for me when I started to code, and it's also the advice I've given on numerous occasions to people that were unsure about pursuing coding, but eventually did go on to become professional software engineers. Now, I believe these baby steps will work for a majority of people that are looking to learn how to program on their own, but it's certainly not the only way to go about it. It's just my 2 cents on the steps that one could take. Okay, let's dive in. Baby step 1 is to explore a language. Any language would work, but I have 2 specific recommendations. More on that in just a minute. Choosing a language at baby step 1 shouldn't feel like a heavy commitment. This is more analogous to window shopping or trying something out. We just need to get the ball rolling with programming itself. Committing to a language and diving deep into its inner workings will come later in the process. If you feel paralyzed about which language to pick, then you're probably doing this baby step wrong. The point is to just get some momentum going. So I'll make this even easier for you. Pick JavaScript or Python. These are dynamically typed languages that are easier to pick up due to a simpler syntax and has nice high-level abstractions to keep you from getting stuck in the weeds of lower-level concerns. If you want to eventually get into server-side development, data science, or anything in the backend, then Python is probably a fine place to start. Not because it's the best language to stick with forever, but because it'll help you get the ball rolling quickly. If you wanted to get into web development or front-end development, then stick with JavaScript. JavaScript is a superior language in this context just by virtue of the fact that it's the language that all browsers will run. But remember, you're just trying to get your feet wet in programming itself at this stage. Just pick one that feels right for you right now. You'll have a chance to pivot at baby step 5. It's really not a big deal which one you pick at this stage. I want you to just get started, not get caught up on the language. Baby step 2 is to get a feel for programming. Now that you've picked a language, presumably JavaScript or Python, go to a tutorial site like Codecademy and start the JavaScript or Python track. Now, you don't have to go very far, maybe 5 or 10 lessons. You'll know if you haven't gone far enough because you won't be able to finish the next baby step. In that case, you can always come back to this tutorial resource and chip away at learning the basics of the language. The key objective is going to be to get a feel for programming. Know that most languages you'll come across has common principles like values, types, variables, data structures like arrays and objects, functions, and control flow like if-else conditions, loops, switch statements, and try-catch statements. Focus on learning these principles through the language you pick. So let me give you a pro mental model for going about this. Don't think about learning the language itself as this unique experience. Think more of it as learning a tool that has a certain grammar and expressiveness to help you write programs. Because at the end of the day, all you're doing as a programmer is writing problems that solve certain problems. And the language itself is just a translation of our thoughts so that the machine can do what we want it to do. This mentality is important because in baby step 5, you're gonna have the opportunity to pivot languages. And you want to have the psychological flexibility to pick what is right for you in that circumstance, as opposed to sticking with the language since it's the one that you started with and it's what you're comfortable with. What you're comfortable with isn't always gonna be the right choice. Moreover, this flexibility and willingness to learn new things is not just important as a software developer, but as a human to survive in today's ever-changing world of knowledge work itself. Baby step 3 is to implement one algorithm. Literally any algorithm that goes from one input to an output. Remember, these are baby steps. Here's a few ideas for functions that you can implement. Given a sentence as a string, return a new string that has every other word from the input sentence. Or given a list of numbers, return the total sum of all of the numbers. Or given a list of numbers, return the biggest difference seen between a pair of any 2 numbers in the list. The point of this is to get algorithmic practice. The thing with Codecademy tutorials beginner tracks is that it's good for introducing you to the syntax and basic mechanics of a language, but it doesn't really force you to think about algorithms too deeply. So this mini exercise in this baby step will be a helpful supplement to what you did in baby step 2. And if you don't feel like you can complete baby step 3, go back to baby step 2 and brush up on the basics a bit more. It's okay, you can take your time with this. Baby step 4 is to assess how programming feels to you. In baby step 4, we're going to do a bit of a self-assessment. It's now appropriate to ask yourself the following questions. Do you like sitting in front of a computer just generally? Do you like sitting in front of a computer trying to figure out why something doesn't work? And what's your overall impression of programming so far? Now the key here is going to be your honesty. No one can do this introspection for you, so be honest with yourself so you know what you're getting yourself into. If your answers to these questions are positive, then you definitely want to continue. You have a promising future in programming. If no, don't worry, you can still continue. You can learn to enjoy this process. Just know that it won't come quickly. I remember feeling pretty unmotivated and defeated when I couldn't solve a tough problem in front of me. especially when I was getting started. Now, I thoroughly enjoy being faced with tough challenges. It's one of the things that I enjoy most about the job. Baby step 5 is to pick a language and read one chapter of a foundational resource. Now that we're ready to move to the next level of commitment, you're gonna want to pick a language. And to be honest, it's going to be okay whichever language you pick. Because I know from the other side, through my own experience as a professional, learning a language is like learning to use a certain brand of tools. Yes, each brand has its quirks, strengths, and weaknesses. But how good of a craftsman are you if you're so attached to a brand of tools that you can't actually get your work done without your specific choice of tools? It doesn't make any sense. A master carpenter will be able to make furniture from any brand of tools that he's given. A master pianist can make beautiful music with a toy piano. A programmer can get the job done in a variety of languages that's called for by the ideal implementation. My high school jazz music teacher always told me, it's not the arrow, it's the Indian. And that phrase has stuck with me ever since. So once you have a language, we're gonna focus on what really matters, establishing accurate mental models of programming concepts. This is like learning good form for your physical exercises. It's like learning the scales and training your ear to have a good taste in music as a musician. So which foundational resources should you choose? If you pick JavaScript, Eloquent JavaScript, the book online at eloquentjavascript.net, is one of the most comprehensive resources for this. If you picked Python, Effective Python or Fluent Python, both seem to be highly regarded in a similar vein as Eloquent JavaScript, but for Python. Whichever resources you go with, just focus on reading one chapter or 2 chapters tops. Just get a feel for what learning the language at a deeper level through reading feels like. And this leads me to my next baby step. Baby step 6 is to assess how you feel about reading. As a programmer, you can't help but read a lot. You'll read lots of technical documentation and product requirements. A lot of our work is either in documents about products, documentation for code, or code itself. We're constantly reading something. If you really don't enjoy the act of reading that much, then know that you're swimming a bit of an uphill battle on this front, at least at the beginning. And yeah, if you absolutely hate reading technical stuff and it's the last thing you choose to do over pretty much anything else, then maybe programming isn't for you. That's a valuable discovery too, but I also think that's a hurdle you can get over. So once you're knee deep into programming, you're gonna get so much practice reading stuff that your reading comprehension of technical stuff is gonna naturally get better. It's like anything else, you get better with practice. Also, another reason why you shouldn't worry too much, there are tons of people who don't necessarily enjoy reading itself that much, but are fine at programming. I would be one of those examples. I never liked reading as a kid, and I still don't read many books. I mention this as a baby step because some of the smartest colleagues that I work with have been phenomenal readers. They comprehend more per minute of reading than I do, and it was one of the reasons why they knew more than I did about the systems that we both worked on together. It's just good to check in to make sure you're aware of what you're signing up for. Baby step 7 is to pick between 2 approaches to learning. So let me break down 2 approaches, the slow approach and the fast approach. So with the slow approach, you're gonna learn to program for fun on your own time. You're gonna be building things that interest you, and you're gonna be learning for the sake of learning, not optimizing for the job search. This is great for people who are looking to explore coding more before deciding on it as a career path. Or it's good for someone who wants to turn an idea into a reality, but they're not in a rush to do it. And it's also good for people who want less pressure and just want to take things slowly. Honestly, if you're literally just getting started right now, then my general advice would be to stick with the slow approach for now. Maybe with some structure and accountability that doesn't cost you anything. You can always switch to a fast approach later when you feel it's right for you. Now, the fast approach. The reason why you take a fast approach is if you're gunning to make a career switch into the industry as a programmer. Presumably, you want this to happen on a relatively quick timeline, within probably 6 to 12 months or something like that. This requires the following things. Discipline. Coding is a thing that you're gonna do every day. Schedule. Set aside a time for coding regularly, preferably every day. Roadmap. Have a roadmap of how you will learn and what resources you'll use. Coding boot camps are a legitimate way to break into industry, though you have to do your research on which programs are reputable and worth joining. A combination of online courses and mentorship from creators in our space could also be a good way to go. The self-taught route can also be compatible with the fast approach, but there's a lot of potholes because it's hard to pull off well without a curated curriculum, financial accountability, and social accountability. You'll need to figure out how to rectify those things for yourself. The fast approach is great for people who want a job as a programmer. and who want to turn some idea into a reality quickly and don't mind the pressure, and they want to learn as quickly as possible. There's nothing inherently good or bad about each of these approaches. They just solve problems in different ways. What I can tell you is that you can be just as good of a programmer with a slow approach as someone that decides to take a fast approach. Two people can take different paths and end up with the same general level of programming skills. Most of the difference will be in how long it's gonna take. The key thing here is to go with what feels right for you given your circumstances and goals. So, in conclusion, once you've gone through these 7 baby steps, you'll be in a very different place than you are now, not knowing how to start or what resources to learn from. Because once the ship is moving, you'll be able to steer it. If you haven't started programming but are feeling analysis paralysis, chances are you're trying to steer a stationary ship. You want to get the ball rolling, and that's what these baby steps are all about. So with that, I hope this video has helped you identify how to start your programming journey and that it feels a little less overwhelming now that you have these guided steps. If you want more content like this about coding, be sure to check out my newsletter, thecommit.dev. I write an edition every week on how to be an effective software engineer and being a high-performing individual. I'll leave a link to it in the video description. Okay, that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.